Good morning. A couple of weeks ago, Prime Minister Mulroney said in a most depressing fashion that this country was bankrupt. It's not bankrupt, but he thinks we're really hard up. And I want to tell you that we're not that hard up, because we on the Webster Show have discovered the secret cabinet offices high in Bentall 4 in downtown Vancouver, and we want to know what is done down there and by whom and to whom. So I sent my intrepid reporter, Schneider, to do an investigative probe and tell us what the cabinet offices are for.
Jack, I didn't know the federal Tories maintained a cabinet office here in downtown Vancouver. Well, I know now because you told me there was one. You also told me to go upstairs and find out exactly what it is they do here, which is probably a good idea since BC has now lost one of its 3 federal cabinet ministers. Remember John Fraser had to resign? Let's go see what's going on. Oh yes, right here. Government of Canada, BC Minister's Office. First thing they're going to have to do. Gonna have to get rid of John Fraser's name. Do you see people coming in and out?
Sometimes.
You do?
Is it not open?
I'll try. It's open. Well, look at this. Nice. Anybody here? Hi, how are you?
Fine, can I help you?
Yeah, I'm from the Jack Webster Show.
Yes.
What happens here?
Pardon me?
What is it that happens here? Is there a cabinet minister in right now?
No, there's not. This is the British Columbia Minister's Office, and is the office of the Honourable Tom Siddon, Pat Carney, and was the office of the Fisheries Minister, the Honourable John Fraser.
Are any of them in right now?
No, there's no cabinet ministers in at the moment. They're all in Ottawa, I believe.
So what is it that happens in here? Do you mind if we take a look around? I mean, it's just incredibly
yes.
beautiful in here, isn't it?
It's a nice office, yes.
Look at these. Look at this big boardroom in here. This is fantastic. What actually happens in here?
Pardon me?
What actually goes on
We
in
use
here?
this office when the ministers are here from Ottawa to meet. Excuse me.
Oh, you've got
I just
question
went through-
period on
Yes,
TV here.
That's right.
And somebody reading the paper? Hi. What do you do here?
I read the paper.
Oh, really? What's your name?
I don't think that's of any consequence.
So you read the paper, you watch TV. Do you work for the federal government?
No,
You work for the Tories?
no.
Who do you work for?
I don't work for anyone right now.
Oh, really? You just hang around here?
No, I don't just hang around here.
What do you do? I don't mean to be rude. It's just, this is quite staggering here. It's
Yes,
nice.
I know, and I think you are being a trifle rude. I don't wish to speak to you.
Well, do you mind if we look around?
Yes, I do.
Are you in charge here?
I'm not in charge, but neither are you.
No. Well, we'll look around just for a little bit if you don't mind. Look in here. Come here. Enormous. Beautiful, beautiful boardroom. Pictures on the table. Nobody here. What do we have over here? Very nice executive offices all around here. Computer terminal here. Receptionist seems to be gone today. Empty office room. Empty office. Let's see if anybody's home. No one's home there. Oops, somebody's left. I think they've left us the office to ourselves. Hello? Anybody here? Cloakroom in there, not much. There's a paper shredder in here. They obviously have lots of documents that they need shredding here. But so far, I don't see anybody. Hello? Nope. No one here. This is obviously going to have to come down pretty quick. Hello? The phone's ringing, but there's nobody here to answer it. I'd answer it, but that would seem pretty rude, I think. Although it might be somebody telling him to take John Fraser's picture off the wall. Yeah, they'll get through. Whoa, look at this. This is really nice. It's easy to imagine being a cabinet minister from BC, sitting down at the desk. Quite nice. Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Well, there's nobody here to answer all the very basic questions. Who's it for? How much does it cost to run? And who's in charge here anyway? We'll try to get those later.
Well, the Queen is certainly there, and she's always in charge. When we get the answers, we'll let you know. Now, this morning, we're going to turn to that very heavy subject of AIDS. I can't think in all my life of the spread of a disease which has caused quite so much concern as this one. And this morning, we have in the studio Dr. Michael Gottlieb, who is the co-chairman of the American Foundation for AIDS Research. That's the one of which Elizabeth Taylor is the national chairman. And Dr. Gottlieb is an internationally known immunologist, and he discovered the AIDS syndrome. And he'll bring us up to date about what prevention what care one must take in handling the disease of AIDS and other aspects of it. Now, it would seem that I'm losing my battle to save the jobs on Lyell Island, because every politician I've spoken to up to now, and that includes Skelly of the NDP, Broadbent of the NDP, and Turner of the Liberals, takes the position that the whole of Moresby comes first, and the hell with the jobs, it would seem to me, is their attitude on Lyell Island. Fresh from the IWA convention in Vancouver today is Jack Munro. We'll see if Munro has given up the fight to save these jobs for the next 20 years on that one tiny little portion of South Moresby, which is obviously common sense to continue to log. Now, it's no wonder with so many forestry jobs going down the tubes, some gone for good, that the BC government has been promoting new industries to create new jobs. And this is what they want to support. Salmon farms that are springing up all over the Sunshine Coast. A brand new industry that's been promised encouragement by the government. But just as the farmers are getting going, you'll meet some who say they're not getting the support the social credit government promised. And first, after the break, Dr. Michael Gottlieb on AIDS research. I want to start from square one with Dr. Michael Gottlieb, University of California, co-chairman of the American Foundation for AIDS, and the man who, what was it precisely you discovered?
In 1981, we found some cases of a rare pneumonia and immune deficiency in 4 men and referred it to Atlanta for further study. That turned out to be the beginning of the AIDS epidemic.
The epidemic was there, somewhere in the world, and you discovered the syndrome.
That's correct. The epidemic caused by a virus was occurring elsewhere in the world, occurring in Africa, in Haiti, in New York, and San Francisco. We simply recognized it first in Los Angeles and let people know about it.
Let's be quite frank. Should everyone be in a perfect panic? Because all of a sudden, I believe, it develops exponentially. It doubles. How long does it take to double in the number of cases in the United States?
Certainly in the United States today, case numbers are doubling every 9 months. There's no need to panic. AIDS has occurred within relatively restricted risk groups, the traditional high-risk groups. It is extending slowly beyond that through sexual contact and in rare instances now through blood transfusion. But those are the ways in which AIDS is spread.
Therefore, unless you researchers find, what do you call it, a cure, an antidote, a magic bullet, this will proceed unchecked until eons ahead. Is that correct?
It is true that we need an effective therapy for AIDS virus infections, and that's the subject of much research going on now around the world. Also, a vaccine is something that's on the horizon, a way to prevent the infection before anyone is ever exposed. But right now, we have 500,000 to 1 million adults in the U.S. alone already exposed to the virus who need some form of treatment to eradicate that viral infection.
Let's take the blunt end first. Now, how many people who carry the AIDS, what is it called?
Virus.
The AIDS virus, get AIDS?
Roughly 10% of people who have been infected with the AIDS virus are expected to ultimately develop AIDS in their lifetime. That could take 5 or 10 years for that disease to manifest itself.
But if you test as carrying the AIDS virus, it's 1 chance in 10 that you'll come down with the disease at some time in the future.
That's the estimate, right.
Therefore, public health authorities will have to keep very close tabs, will they not, on everyone who tests positive with the AIDS virus.
Public health authorities and those people themselves should want to know whether they've been exposed to the AIDS virus and should want to know where treatment approaches might be available when they do come along so they can queue up for them.
You mentioned the vaccine. Is there any real prognosis, a real prospect of a vaccine appearing in the next year or so?
The remarkable scientific progress on AIDS. The virus that causes it was discovered 2 years after the syndrome was recognized. And the composition of the virus, its behavior, and its coat proteins to which you'd make a virus are known. So there are prospects for a vaccine within the next 3 to 5 years.
Right. Can you give me authoritatively as can be done now, how you catch AIDS and how you can avoid AIDS?
AIDS is caught, the AIDS virus infection is caught through intimate contact, that is sexual contact with exchange of semen. In some instances, it can be transmitted by men to women and women to men through ordinary sexual activity. In some instances, it can be transmitted by blood, although screening procedures are now being instituted around the world to make the blood supply safer. It cannot be caught from drinking fountains, swimming pools. It doesn't scatter in the air and be acquired by a person.
In other words,
through
you've
that
got to
route.
work pretty hard to catch AIDS in any other way than sexual intercourse.
That's correct.
Is it automatic that infection is transmitted? On each case, there's a new sexual partner if one of the partners has AIDS.
Not automatically, but certainly people who have intercourse with people who have AIDS or others who have been exposed or infected with the AIDS virus, that definitely increases their risk of coming down with an AIDS virus
But
infection.
those who indulge only in heterosexual activity can relax, surely.
Can't totally relax. Sexually active adults do have some crossover with members of AIDS risk groups in sexual activity. And AIDS has been transmitted to heterosexual adults through contact with members of bisexual community and also through intravenous drug use in some cities.
Forget the intravenous drug use and forget the risk from hemophiliacs, because I'm confident, are you confident that the blood transmission can be avoided on proper testing of the blood?
We have very good blood tests at this time. They are being improved, but at this time the state of the art says that the blood supply is safe.
And of course, if you're using a dirty needle as a heroin junkie, your chances of getting it are really quite high, are they not?
They are, and drug use needs to be discouraged in the schools among our young people. This is where we need to target AIDS education programs to keep young people away from intravenous drugs and away from sexual lifestyles that put them at risk for the AIDS virus infection.
Is it possible to say that the AIDS first appeared because of homosexual rectal intercourse, anal intercourse?
That's very unlikely. Most evidence favors the AIDS virus appeared in Central Africa, probably in the mid-70s, in the heterosexual population.
Well, why did it explode among the homosexuals so dramatically and so fearfully? Why?
Probably related to artifact and to level of sexual activity. Having sex with multiple different partners in the United States probably caused AIDS numbers to grow so rapidly. But now that's changing to some extent, and AIDS remains a risk for all sexually active adults.
So therefore, heterosexual activity only, if there's been contact with an AIDS partner at some time, can transmit it just as simply.
We believe that's the case. There may be some factors about the gay lifestyle that increase the risk for homosexual men.
Broken blood vessels.
Very possibly.
Semen itself. If a male with AIDS fertilizes heterosexually a woman, will that baby automatically carry at least the AIDS virus?
We don't know at this time the answer to that question, and our best advice is for males who are positive and women who are positive in that blood test to defer pregnancy until we have that answer.
Do you think we'll come to the stage where almost everybody will have to get an AIDS virus test before they have children?
I don't think so. I think AIDS is relatively limited to risk groups, and people individually know from their sexual histories whether they're at risk for AIDS. Those people can consider having such a test.
More with Dr. Gottlieb, co-chairman of the American Foundation for AIDS Research, after the break. Dr. Gottlieb, no matter what esoteric things we talk about, people will always finish up by asking the simplest questions. Now, you made it perfectly clear. Does one have to work hard to catch AIDS?
One has to work hard to catch AIDS.
Can you tell me that kissing does not transmit AIDS?
Can't tell you 100%, and more work needs to be done, but it's an extremely low, infinitesimal probability event.
So you can't catch AIDS from a toilet seat. Remember the old story about syphilis? You can catch it from a toilet seat. That's just nonsense, right?
Nonsense.
And you can't get it from kissing.
Right?
But from, what about toothbrushes and the exchange of things in the bathroom and all that kind of thing?
People, as a matter of good hygiene, shouldn't share toothbrushes or razors for any disease.
And what about the research? Where is the research now going? What are you going for next?
Research is headed toward treatments for AIDS virus infections, to get that virus infection under control, to get a vaccine, and to get better blood tests to know when a person can transmit the disease and when they're free of that possibility.
But you don't think we're that near it yet, do you?
We're not that near it. We're working toward it. We've got a 5- and 10-year timeline right now.
What about international cooperation? I detected a little bit of backbiting I felt between Paris and the United States on who was crediting this and that, and the need for some people to feel they've got to go to France for treatment. Are they ahead of us, us being North America on this occasion?
Well, Western Europe isn't ahead of us. The case numbers are becoming comparable, but the research programs in North America are taking the leadership role toward finding the answers. Yes, there's some backbiting, but there's also some healthy competition going on as well.
What I'm afraid of, and we've seen some of it in New York, haven't seen so much in California, is a form of public panic about AIDS. People who will say, look, these people who carry the AIDS virus, 10% of them are going to catch the disease. Maybe we should isolate AIDS patients altogether. Is that a reasonable medical thing to do, forgetting the civil liberties involved?
Well, the fear has been disproportionately high. It's been very intense. And as people understand more about the virus and how it is spread and how it's not spread, that fear will come under control. I don't think we've come to that point where we need to interfere with individual civil liberties.
And of course, if there are mothers out there who are nervous about other kids in the school playground, and we saw the panic in New York, what would you tell those mothers? Because as a mother, I might say, you know how messy kids are, you know how they can fall down on the playground, you know how they can scrape their knees, you know how they eat each other's sandwiches and whatnot. I don't want my child to go to any school where there's a kid with AIDS.
The chances of a child catching AIDS from another child's scraped knee or from sharing a sandwich are nil. I think the approach they've taken to evaluate each case on an individual basis is a wise one, and some of those kids ought to be able to go to school. Others, there may be reasons why that child should be in a private school.
And once you recognize a case of AIDS as such, is there anything that you as doctors can do except ameliorate the progressive demise of the patient?
At this point, it's as you describe, but we're finding drugs with some effect against the virus that look very promising. We're entering those drugs into clinical trials, so there is hope, even for patients who have AIDS, and certainly patients who have earlier forms of AIDS virus infection.
No, Dr. He, but as I understand it, M&B 693, or penicillin, aims particularly at an infection and kills that one infection. You can't have a single magic bullet for AIDS, though, can you?
Yes, we can. That's exactly where we're going. Exactly for a single magic bullet for the AIDS virus itself, and then additional bullets to build up the immune system.
But I thought that when your immune system collapsed, that there might be 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 complications in your immune system, and that you would have to get 20 or 30 or 40, 50 magic bullets. I'm wrong.
That would be the case for the patient with full-blown or advanced AIDS. But we're finding patients with much earlier forms of the viral infection, and that's the point at which to intervene with something like a magic bullet for the AIDS virus, let the immune system repair itself, and fight off all those 40 and 50 and other infections that could.
You're not looking for an like a penicillin-type bullet at all, are you?
Well, it'll be an antiviral. Penicillin is an antibacterial drug, and there are antifungal drugs. We're looking specifically for an antiviral drug that hits this little virus, HTLV3, the AIDS virus.
And kills it dead.
And stops it in its tracks.
This American Foundation for AIDS Research, you've raised a hell of a lot of money, have you not?
We're working toward that. We've just formed. We're going to have private sector support for AIDS research to complement what's going on through government.
It wouldn't be fair if I didn't give you a chance to ask straightforward, simple questions, not for his sake, but for my sake, of Dr. Michael Gottlieb, co-chairman of the American Foundation for AIDS Research. After the break. Dr. Gottlieb is speaking at the Vancouver Institute. You're going to show me the thing? Yes. AIDS. Lecture Hall 2, Woodward Instructional Resources Center, UBC, Saturday, October 5, 8:15 p.m. That's it. Now, calls. Go ahead to Dr. Gottlieb.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, doctor. What I wanted to ask you was, once the deficiency system starts to break down, how much longer does the AIDS victim roughly have to survive? And also, what do you recommend that family does to support the patient with the AIDS, and what we can do to help him get through this time?
Good morning. Once the immune deficiency does occur and it's in its full-blown form, patients generally do not survive beyond 2 or 3 years. They certainly need all the compassionate, supportive attention from family and friends that can be given. There's no evidence whatsoever that patients with AIDS can transmit the AIDS virus infection in the home setting to their friends or family. No evidence to that point. Therefore, they need a lot of nurturing, a lot of care, especially if they're terribly ill.
Thank you. Anything else, ma'am?
Well, I just want to thank you very much and keep up the good work, and hopefully someday we'll pull through with something. Thanks again.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Doctor. You mentioned a certain amount of competitiveness between, say, France and the United States. And I mean, competitiveness is well and good, but recognizing the severity of this disease and the fact that it is spreading around the world, don't you think it would be a little more adult of the different governments in the World Health Medical Organization to combine all the funds and to work for one thing and to combine all your different research intimately like that?
There's some practical matters that make it difficult to combine any kind of world effort against anything.
World ego or government ego?
Government ego, call it what you will. A certain amount of competition among scientific researchers is helpful. Everyone wants to win the Nobel Prize and to find the cure for AIDS. And the more governments we can encourage to invest in this problem, the better.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I was wondering whether or not you would feel that a person who is primarily heterosexual, who's had several homosexual encounters over the last 5 years, would be in a high-risk group.
I think the Centers for Disease Control's definition of someone in a high-risk group is anyone who has had a homosexual contact. And so, yes, that's very likely, and that person, depending on how he or she feels, might wish to be tested.
Do you think that there is a need for psychological or basically emotional counseling on a level with an extended level with people who have discovered they have the virus itself?
And people probably should adopt positive health styles. If they're feeling well, even if they have the virus itself, adopting a positive health style of looking out for one's health in a positive way, decreasing numbers of different sexual partners, and seeing to psychological well-being is a good thing. Any counseling that is available should be available to those people and can be effectively utilized.
Thank you. This might lead to a sexual revolution in reverse. Probably has done already, I should imagine.
Probably so.
Considerably reduced the homosexual intercourse between male partners.
I think it's clearly done that already. The question is frequently asked, how concerned should heterosexual adults be? And how concerned should we be about our people reaching sexual maturity? And the answer is that everyone needs to decrease numbers of different sexual partners, because multiple different sexual partners constitute the major risk for developing AIDS exposure.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning, Doctor and Jack. I'd like to know the percentage or the growth rate amongst young teenagers, those under 15, for example. I have a young daughter who's just coming up to that age, and I'm, kind of scared.
Very good question. Those studies are just being done in areas where the AIDS virus infection is common, for example, the United States, and hopefully, we'll have those answers soon, but that information isn't available, and the message needs to get out to the high schools that certain health styles can lead to complications.
Indiscriminate sexual intercourse can lead to complications of other things, of course, but it's a particular threat with AIDS in the vicinity.
The particular threat with AIDS is a fatal disease. Other sexually transmitted diseases have existed for hundreds of years.
And can be cured, most of them can.
Correct.
Go ahead, please.
No, I believe I was misdiagnosed as having AIDS. I was told I ought to have AIDS, and I believe there could be hundreds of such cases in North America, and I'm wondering why nobody ever sort of talks about this. The symptoms are so ambiguous.
What do you mean you were told you had it when you don't have it?
Yes.
Well, AIDS is a new disease. It was described in 1981. It takes a certain amount of time.
You described it in 1981.
That's right. It takes a certain amount of time for the medical community to be brought up to date totally with respect to the disease and symptoms and how to diagnose it. The blood test was introduced in March of 1985, and it's only one blood test and is subject to interpretation. So the medical community is learning along with the population about AIDS and is only a couple of steps ahead. So we ask for your indulgence and understanding of that.
And you were told you had it, and then you were told you don't have it, and now you're worried about both answers, right?
No, I'm worried about how many other people out there that, due to the ambiguity of the symptoms, have been told they have it when they shouldn't have. It's an extreme psychological trauma associated with such a thing happening.
Well, certainly that is a worrisome situation. The availability of the new blood test and its appropriate use by physicians and healthcare providers can help to decrease that ambiguity. And so it may warrant a reevaluation when that test becomes available to your doctor.
You think the test will also be refined down to much more of a fine art?
With time, the test is going to get better, but at the present time, it's a very good test.
And the blood test at the moment, it's also a good test, is it, for transfusions?
Very good test for transfusions, and the blood supply is safe.
Well, I don't believe that it's even been clearly established that this virus absolutely causes much of anything. I've seen other articles that have...
Doc, what do you say to that?
Why?
The evidence is overwhelming. The scientific evidence is overwhelming that this virus causes AIDS and a whole range of diseases that fall short of being full-blown AIDS.
Good. Thank you, sir, and best of luck. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have two questions. Would it, for people who work with food, such as butchers or restaurant personnel, would it help for them to be screened to see if they had AIDS? And also, I'd like to cut down the chance of it being spread. And also, would it be helpful if everyone had mandatory testing in order to sort of curb the spread of AIDS?
I don't think we've reached that point. Certainly, meat cutters have had no increased risk of having AIDS, and studies show no increased risk of positive blood tests among people in such an occupation.
So therefore, the same applies to waiters and waitresses and anybody? You say there is no really valid concern about casual transmission of AIDS in any normal, reasonably hygienic manner.
That's correct.
It's got to
There will
be
no need for
no
such
need for
widespread
panic.
screening.
It's got to be intimate sexual contact. Really? Good. Kelowna. Go ahead from Kelowna.
Yes, thank you. I have several concerns. One, the medical and dental profession has been actively involved in the hepatitis immunization recently against hepatitis B.
Hepatitis B vaccine.
There is some concern that perhaps the AIDS virus may be carried within this injection.
There's absolutely no concern about the hepatitis B vaccine preparation. There are no increased numbers of AIDS cases among people who've received that vaccine who are not at risk for AIDS for other reasons. And there are no cases that I'm aware of where anyone has developed the antibody to the AIDS virus, that is the positive blood test, after receiving the hepatitis B vaccine.
No cases at all?
None.
Has this been actively tested? I mean, we're talking about up to 5 years for any signs to show up.
There are several studies of healthcare workers who received the hepatitis B vaccine years ago and are being followed in a prospective manner, and still there's no evidence that the hepatitis B vaccine is harmful in any way.
It would seem to me that dentists are among the professions, is a profession who are very worried about treating AIDS patients. Have they got, they're thinking of the mucus fluid, I suppose, right?
And certainly dentists have a greater risk of developing hepatitis B, in answer to the previous question, have a greater risk of developing hepatitis B from their occupational exposure than they do have of developing AIDS or AIDS virus infection. And certainly they're concerned about the AIDS virus infection, and protective recommendations for dentists have been issued by the dental societies, including wearing gloves during their dental procedures to minimize the exposure of their hands to blood, which normally occurs during any dental procedure.
What AIDS may have done for us is restore or increase the hygiene measures in every case of personal contact with the medical profession, may it not?
I think that's
I mean, we've had policemen who've been frightened to handle cases where a person with AIDS has been murdered and there's blood all around the place. Now, that's not unreasonable for the policeman to be nervous about it, is it?
That's not unreasonable. There are precautions recommended for police and paramedics and other healthcare workers who may come into contact with large amounts of blood, and certainly caution is warranted under those circumstances.
Okay, we'll take another call. Go ahead, please. Oh, sorry, just a minute, I took the wrong one, LD2. Go ahead from Aldergrove.
Good morning.
Morning.
I was just wondering if there's any truth into if you get bit by a mosquito.
Oh, yeah, it's a mosquito and tears.
No cases of AIDS have been shown to be transmitted by mosquitoes or by tears. The idea is that the amount of virus in tears is so insignificant that transmission by that route is highly, highly unlikely.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, two questions I have here. One is, how long does this actual test take once the blood sample has been taken? And does Dr. Gottlieb know about the research, I read this in the yesterday's province, that's being done in Israel on it, where a doctor there claims to have made a partial cure of a 12-year-old child with an extract taken from a calf's thymus gland. I believe the guy's name is Training.
Test takes about 6 hours to do at the very most. Depending on the laboratory, there are breakthroughs in therapy occurring around the world, and thymic hormones, such as was described by Dr. Trainin, may offer one avenue of approach. My own feeling is that the combination of an antiviral agent with a thymic hormone to restore the immune system may be more productive in the long run. But we welcome these positive reports.
My thanks to Dr. Gottlieb from UCLA, Department of Medicine, and he'll be speaking at the Vancouver Institute at UBC Saturday night at 8:15. Oh, it's up there again. They can read for themselves. Thanks, Dr. Gottlieb.
Thank you.
Next, Jack Munro, President of the IWA, after the break. Jack Munro is just wrapping up the IWA annual convention, and this is a year when you come up for negotiations, is it not, Mr. Munro?
1986 is negotiations, yes, sir.
Nothing in 85?
No.
You got an increase for 85, 86. Have you taken the reasonable position that you don't want an increase, that you're merely going to try and hold on to what you've got, even as companies are going belly up around you?
Jack, we don't decide what's going to be in the negotiating package until March, probably, at a wages and contract conference. The convention that just ended last night is a policy conference, and every other year an election issue.
I see they shelved your policy on giving a $5 million donation for proposed reforestation and silviculture. I thought you announced that, and now I see it goes up in smoke. It's shelved. What happened? Have you changed your mind about putting some of your money into reforestation to encourage other people to put in lots of money?
I haven't changed my mind at all, Jack, and it's a good idea, and it should be pursued. The executive was not unanimous on it, and it looked like we were going to have a bit of a scrap on the floor, and rather than have a scrap on the floor and have a damn good idea tarnished to some extent with some bitterness, decided to shelve it, not deal with the resolution that we had prepared. I think the problem was I announced it in my opening address to the convention, and some of the local presidents want time to consider it, that sort of stuff.
So therefore, this is one occasion where Munro decided that discretion was the better part of valor.
Munro may decide that quite often.
Oh, I know that perfectly well. Now let's get down to what I want to talk to you about. Bob Skei was on this program, and I found it very difficult indeed to get him in any way to endorse the saving the logs on the jobs on Lyell Island. Broadbent came on. He gave me exactly the same view. The NDP policy is South Mosby. The jobs can be replaced some other time. Turner of the Liberals did the same thing. Are you going to give up the fight, which you know I endorse, to allow the logging to continue on Lyell Island and let these 400 or 500 jobs and spin-off jobs at least help the economy of the Charlottes and keep people employed? Are you going to give up the fight?
Jack, no, I'm not. Before I do that, though, we had our banquet last night, and this very great fan of yours told me to look you right straight, make sure your sideburns are the same length, because she thinks sometimes they're not. But the other message that I...
How are they?
Not bad, but a little bit.
Well, that was a stupid diversion.
The other thing is, Jack, a lot of our people are really upset with BCTV that your program is not rerun when they come home off afternoon shift. They watch it as part of their... And now a lot of people miss it, and that's wrong. You should talk to the station. Lyell Island.
Just a minute. You come on here and you'll do anything to attempt to embarrass me. The station...
I'm not embarrassing you.
No, I mean, I feel badly about it, too. I valued my rebroadcast and Czech,
right.
But I cannot argue with a decision made by Czech TV not to carry it. I think it's a shame that they're not carrying it.
I think it's worse than that, Jack. I think that you contribute a hell of a lot, and a lot of people, just a lot of people watch this program, and it's important. And people that work day shift or shift work of some description cannot now have an opportunity to watch it. You have good guests, and I think that they have taken away from a good chunk of working people in the public out there the right to watch your program. And not you, but whoever made that decision, in our opinion, made a mistake. Lyell Island.
You're calling the people at Czech TV stupid.
Well,
you're being terribly modest about it. Anyway, thank you.
We're supposed to have a nice program this morning, and we're not supposed to get excited with each other, but whoever made that decision, if we should get a little bit excited, it was a dumb decision.
Okay, fair enough, that's all. It's their right to make the decision.
Right. Lyell
Island.
Island.
Decision is made.
Lyell Island. I do not agree with the position as expressed by some politicians on your program.
To NDP.
Which may be Broadbent and maybe Skei. And I have talked to Broadbent and I have talked to Skei about it. I also take strong exception from Turner, because you and I were in the Charlottes on Lyell Island when Turner was up there. Now, Turner had a very nice, expensive cruise around the South Moresby on a boat, looking at the South Moresby from a boat, from the water. Most of the things that you see from the water up the side hills, 1,000 feet, has been logged. And a lot of people don't understand that. It was logged for the Sitka spruce to build warplanes during the war. It naturally regenerated and looks beautiful. It's a beautiful forest.
You can't even see where they're logged during the war.
You can't tell. And a lot of people who say, let's not log that, it's already been logged. The second growth they're looking at.
And furthermore, all that Turner did, apart from this Darwin Sound, which costs you $1,300 a week. The guy in the Darwin Sound gets $13,000 every week for taking a bunch of university professors and high-flown politicians. And they went to the hot springs. I went and looked at the logging. I didn't go to the hot springs.
Jack, our membership appreciate, and I want to say on their behalf, we appreciate what you're doing. You're on the right track. There should be logging on Lyell Island, and for these people who say, well, the loggers should go to Sewell Inlet or go someplace else. Jack, the loggers are now being forced off of Lyell Island. In 2 weeks, we won't have a person there because they won't renew the cutting permits. And there is no more timber. I have a telex, Jack, that went from the Deputy Minister of Labor to John McLaughlin, the Superintendent for Bevan Logging, and it says, this is to confirm my advice that the coast timber supply areas are fully committed. There is no available volume for trade or exchange for any volume removed by South Moresby Park proposals that signed A.C. McPherson was dated yesterday.
After the break.
There are little bits of this rebroadcast.
Put up the phones.
I already did.
That's a good fight, that. That's a good cause. We lost the midnight rebroad. 1 and 2. Well, I'm trying to get Pelton, the Minister of Environment, on the air if he ever comes back from wherever he is. Because just to hammer Lyell Island, there is no earthly reason, because they haven't made up their mind in Moresby yet, why they can't give them cutting permits to continue to cut.
Right.
On the tree farm
No
license.
earthly reason whatsoever, Jack. And more than that, the chief of the Haidas, who got all nervous about doing his thing, is not appearing to have the support of the nation that he represents.
Well, there was one disastrous meeting up there where practically nobody turned up for the meeting.
Right. I think 27 people.
Many Haidas actually work in the logging industry on the Charlottes.
A lot of Haidas are damn good loggers and members of ours and want to continue to log.
Well, I'd like to ask Premier Bennett why he's wiping out 85 jobs on Lyell Island when we've got 14.3% unemployment. How many jobs have you lost in the industry since the Depression?
Almost 20,000.
Almost 20,000 jobs.
Right.
Here's a chance to save 100
Right.
or maybe 400 jobs if you include the spin-off.
The spin-off, Jack, right, the towing, the manufacturing, and we need the logs. There aren't logs wandering around all over the place. We need those logs, and Jack, it is so insane in this almost 20,000, right, in this economy, almost 20,000 IWA people, and we are dumping out another 100 people because Pelton, not the Minister of Forests, but Pelton, or the Premier, or whoever it is, decided that we aren't just going, the license is there, we aren't going to give them another cutting permit. It is insanity. Insanity.
And what people don't realize...
What the hell does a manufacturing plant do? You don't manufacture logs for nothing. Those logs are going to be lost, and we can do it. The reforestation, the industry has not had a good record on cleaning up where they've logged. Reforestation on the Charlottes or Lyell Island is as good as it is any place.
Well,
20-year crops are are looking beautiful. They're within 1 year of being logged.
But to be quite brutal, not Broadbent, not Skelly, not Turner, really stop to think that these guys some of them might well finish up on welfare instead of working.
Well, I think
we're boring people to death. I just wish Waterland would put down his teddy bear and use some clout in the cabinet to issue the cutting permits on Lyell Island, because not to issue it is crass selfishness and totally ignoring the interest of the ordinary working people of British Columbia.
Jack, if the Minister of Forests desert the forest in favor of the ex-mayor of Haney or wherever he's from, the Minister of Environment, that's tragic in this province.
And it's not as if you were advocating no park in Mosby.
Jack, we've said, look, if people would start saying, let's extract Lyell Island out, then if they have to make the rest of South Moresby a park, so be it. But we would prefer to get it out of the political arena. Let some impartial people look at South Moresby. There is a lot of South Moresby that should be protected. There's no question about that.
And there's some that should be logged.
There's some that should be logged.
And the weather's so awful anyway, it's only rich tourists that will get to Moresby, right?
3,000 a day to replace what we produce on Lyell Island is nonsense.
Go ahead, please.
Jack Munro, don't you find it sort of ironic that your own kind of people, left-wingers, are the ones that are causing you the grief? Basically, the conservative, non-political people want to log there.
Well, I think one of the problems is that politicians are paying too much attention to the amount of letters that they get. Macmillan, a conservative, if you want to talk about conservatives, I don't think has ever been there. Came out to Banff and made a speech to some wilderness people, and it was popular politically to throw in all of the South Moresbys into a park and got a rounding applause for it. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
I know, but he's right, though. It's your NDPers that will always go along with the bleeding hearts without looking at the detail of the case, isn't it?
Jack?
Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, I got the yes.
We support the NDP because they are the party more closely aligned with the way we think, but we have some disagreements.
That's obvious. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, I work on a log barge, and we pull out a Lyell Island all the time. I just think a few more of these people in this province should get up there and see it themselves and understand the real issues at hand.
How much do you make in the log barge? Pretty good money, isn't it?
Oh, that's pretty good, yeah. You know, 3,000 clear a month anyways.
How much?
3,000.
3,000 clear a month. And what happens if Lyell Island closes down?
It means another log barge ties up.
How many men will lose their jobs?
Well, there's 4 loaders, 5 loaders, and maybe 9-man crew on the barge, on the tug, I mean.
So that's 14 or 15 direct jobs, plus all the sawmill jobs down in House Sound.
Plus a couple other guys working the bags on the sound on the water itself.
That's the kind of thing that Pelton should better bleeding well learn about.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
I think a few more people should really go up there themselves and meet some
To
of
this
these people.
caller, Jack, to this caller, how many bags of popcorn would he have to sell at $4 an hour at some circus to clear $3,000 a month?
10 million. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Can't eat that much popcorn.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I'd like to ask Jack Munro why they want to use the pension money for silviculture, and that when all our logs right now are going to China and Japan.
I don't really want to use pension money for silviculture. What I said is 6 or 8 months ago or something about starting a fund that hasn't been picked up by any governments. We have to get serious about it. At that point in time, I talked about $600 million. I said that if the pension money, maybe in the pension fund, invested $5 million into a fund for seed money, that we would hopefully put some pressure on governments and industry to put additional money in there and kind of an endowment fund. I don't want to, you can't spend the pension money. Pension money is for pensioners.
Anyway, it's been shelved for the moment. He's backed off. More with Jack Munro after the break. Go ahead from Prince Rupert to Jack Munro, Regional President of the IWA.
Yeah, I have one question and one statement. It seems to me that most of the local people that I talked to thought they were going to be relocated on different cuts by the same Frank Beban and company or whatever it may be. And 11 years ago, I had the chance to fly the lower Moresby area, and
I never saw such a disgusting sight of rape of logs in my life. I'd never had it was just terrible to see how much wood had been fallen and creeks ruined and everything like that.
That's not right. Let's take one point at a time. On creeks, there was a slide there. That all the South Moresby slides. That's the kind of terrain it is in rain. As far as creeks are concerned, there were no fish on Lyell Island. Our guys, loggers on their own, set up a little homemade fish hatchery type thing. The federal fish wouldn't give them any eggs, so they got their own fish eggs. They get their own way of fertilizing them. They have a 90% success rate, I think, Jack.
No, but
the creeks now are full of fish on Lyell Island, is the point.
Where was the rape of South Moresby we're talking about? There are tree farm licenses run by Crown and Mac Blow on Graham Island and on the top part of South Moresby. Is that the logging you were referring to?
Oh, I was flying from Sandspit to Tassou, and there wasn't
Tassou is the big iron ore mine in the south which closed a number of years ago.
Oh, right. That's right, and it's just incredible the amount of wood that was taken out. Now, the practices of logging, that's another story. We have to maybe scrutinize them maybe more. I don't know. It might be getting better, but in general, there's been a lot of wood taken off of there and nothing in general put back. Sure, they might be cleaning up the
That's not right.
But,
that's not true.
You want to fly over Moresby now, you can't even see where the logging took place along the A-frames on the coast.
Up from the water, 1,000 feet has been logged.
What about inland?
Inland
There's
is
no
being
logging south of Tangel Island except for Lyell Island. None. You're talking about the upper half of the island. I flew over all of Graham and much of Moresby, and the regeneration is incredible because the trees grow about 4 or 5 times quicker there than they do in the Prince Rupert Forest District, and I'm going to carry on.
We've logged, Jack, up there on...
Go ahead from Dawson Creek.
Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've traveled the Dawson Creek Tumbler Ridge Road for almost 2 years, and all you can see is everything is logged out. It's dirty. There's everything. You name it is there. It's all. It's never been looked after right.
Right.
The odd trees that have been planted are maybe 30 feet apart. You know, and all this just for the name of money, for some big shots, you know, companies who wants to make a buck, or some union leaders who don't want to lose their jobs. And it's all in the name of money. There's nothing there, and if they're going to do the same thing for the Queen Charlotte Islands,
Look,
well,
if you don't know what the hell
I
you're
agree with
talking
the
about, you
NPP.
shouldn't phone.
Moratorium on logging for 10 years until they all get their act together, till they want to know what they want to do with the logs instead of shipping them whole.
Fair enough. He wants to suspend logging for 10 years. Don't worry about the unemployed.
What is he doing driving back and forth? Probably if it wasn't for the lumber industry, he wouldn't be driving back and forth doing anything. That's the problem with if we keep getting pushed off of areas where you can grow a respectable tree in 30 and 40 and 50 years. We're going to be up north where it takes 150 years to grow a damn tree.
Well, I mean, I'm certainly not here to defend the logging practices or the cut and
neither
get
am I.
out practices for many years. A simple fact of the matter is that the economy of British Columbia depends on logging. It's up to the government to make sure that the logging practices are right and that they get a pound of flesh. In the meantime, you can't swan about this province saying, don't let's cut down any trees, it all looks beautiful. We'll all finish up on welfare.
Right.
I don't know why I'm arguing your cause, but it
Well,
annoys the
you
hell
do
out
it
of me.
well, Jack. Well, you're right, Jack, on this one.
Go ahead, please.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what, every logging president in British Columbia supports me, every logging executive supports me, every union worker supports me, every housewife who's got to put food on the table supports me. We're not all airy-fairy people who can live on visual impact of Mother Nature. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack and Jack.
Good morning.
Hello?
Yeah.
Good morning.
What I wanted to ask was, when you cut down these trees, is the place cleaned up after?
Answer the question, Jack.
Well, in most cases, the industry should have its rear end kicked for not doing a proper job of cleaning up, and the government should have its rear end kicked for not giving them enough trees to replant so that we can do reforestation. Short answer is no, they don't do a good enough job. Because South Moresby is so damn high profile, they are doing a better job there.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
That's you.
Yeah, it's not just woodworkers that are losing their jobs. It's also steel workers. I work in a wire rope plant, or I used to.
Right.
And we just lost over 100 jobs in the last 3 years. And, you know, we service woodworkers, chokers, straw lines, stuff like that. And out of 8 of our plants, 3 have closed down, and the rest have laid off over 200 workers.
And you've lost a total of more than 200 workers because of the downturn in logging activity in British Columbia.
That's right, and mining.
And mining, of course, too. Thanks. Somebody's got to tell some of these airy-fairy people the facts of life, although it's perfectly self-evident that with 14% unemployment, we're twice as bad off as Ontario. More with Munro after the break. Go ahead to Jack Munro.
Yes, anything that's accomplished now regarding the logging is too late for me. I'm a former employee of Canfor, and I just don't understand now what's going to happen to the mill workers. I realize logging is number one, but what's going to, if you don't have the mills operating, what's the good of the logs?
True enough, Canfor's had a very tough time and is still having a very tough time, as you well know. How long had you worked for Canfor?
It would have been 30 years in December.
What kind of salary did you have, if you don't mind giving me a rough
At
idea?
the last raise, I was 1378, I believe. Went up from 1378. I just had gotten it before I was made redundant.
And now, what kind of pension have you got?
I haven't got a pension. This is part of the problem. You want to tell me what I'm going to do, Jack, for the next 5 years?
How old are you?
5.
55.
That's right.
Where did you work?
I work. Where at Canfor?
Like in the office, or
No. I was a Raymond Patcher till they threw them out.
why are you not part of our pension plan? I don't understand.
I'm a part of the pension plan, but the early pension is
Oh, yeah.
$8.60, so I got to work.
Yeah, that's right. This lady is right, Jack. You know, but as an hourly paid, she's part of our pension plan. But at age 55, you can't draw on it. You just destroy it. It's too early.
Jack Munro, please.
Yes.
My question is, there's not only Canfor's out, but from some of the talk I heard on a contract coming up next year, there's going to be more people out. What's going to happen to us all?
Well, I don't know, but somebody has got to get a handle on it. This 20,000 people that we have less members now than we had in 1981 are I guess, probably 10,000 of them will never, ever get back into the forest.
This is what really annoys me. Here's a woman, 30 years in Canfor, laid off. Here are 85 jobs that could start again tomorrow. Right. They keep 400 or 500, I think Bevan Logging or Western say about 600 jobs totally involved. And all we need is a nod of the head from this man Pelton and this man Waterland.
Right.
But they don't give a damn about this woman from Canfor, or the next guy that's going to be laid off at Canfor, or the next woman that's going to be laid off at Canfor. They've got to realize people are getting damned hungry in this province.
But Jack, you're not thinking about one other thing. I am 55, but there's a lot of 25 and 30-year-olds.
Right.
I'll say women who are single. They'll take them before they do me.
You know, and for the audience, Jack, this woman worked at PV. It's now shut down. 310 people. 290 of them were over 45. 155 of those were over 55. Out on the street. Canfor right now at Inglewood, I think, have something like 16 booms of log marked for export.
16?
16.
Instead of going to the mills, they're going for export.
Right.
Yeah, but it isn't Canfor's fault, Mr. Monroe. How much money can a company lose?
Well, it is Canfor's fault. We tried to tell the plywood section of the plywood industry on the coast of British Columbia in 76 and 77, they had to start making products that the people were buying and stop making products that people weren't buying. And they ignored us. We said, if you ignore us, the plywood industry is going down the tube. The plywood industry on the coast of British Columbia is going down the tube.
Because nobody wants sanded fair plywood anymore, it would seem.
That's right.
Ma'am, I'm glad I called you. I'm glad you called me.
Take care, Jack.
Much obliged, sir.
I'm starting to rattle you.
Well, no, I'm beginning to get really rattled about the fact that And I met a guy when I was up in Alberni who boat came alongside me, and he ranted and raved at me. Steve Wyatt was with me. Steve was with me. And he says, I've just been laid off at Canfor. And he says, I've been there 17 years. And he says, I'm going to be bumped for the jobs that are left by men with 30 years experience, seniority in the IWA. Here's a guy, 17 years in the business. No hope of future employment. Who gives a damn? Nobody, it would seem.
Jack, one of my officers has 23 or 25 years, I think, seniority, and if he went back to his plant, Canadian Forest Products Hardwood, couldn't hold a job with 25 years seniority.
There are people with 26, 27, 28, 29,
28
30.
years to hold a job. Ridiculous. Is that when you caught the fish?
The 31.5 pounder.
I see.
It was not previously netted and alongside the boat. The kind of rumor you would spread. Go ahead, please.
Yes, is it me?
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to start out by giving both you and Jack Munro high accolades this morning for having the guts to stand up and talk on this and to relay it to the public as you are.
Well, just remember, Bennett, just remember, I've just got time
here.
to say one thing. Bennett doesn't give a damn about the 85 jobs in Lyell Island or the 300 other jobs. Neither does Pelton, neither does Waterland, neither does Skelly, neither does Turner, and neither does Broadbent. That's the kind of leadership we're getting in this country today. Go on unemployment insurance, the feds pay it. You're off to Australia for what, 8 days, 9 days?
Yeah, I don't agree with all the names you had in
Never
there.
mind.
Yes, I'm going to
on
Australia.
time. See when you get
Yeah.
back. I'll be back after the break.
All right.
I make no apologies for what I'm saying and will continue to say about the jobs on Lyell Island. Unemployment is the biggest problem this province faces, no matter what Expo can do. Now we're going to look at the problems in fish farming, which the government has been trying hard to promote in British Columbia. Schneider's report.
Jack, Sechelt Inlet is the home to BC's rapidly growing salmon farm industry. There are probably about 20 farms in this area, and it's expected that within the next year there should be another 20. It's no wonder the BC government was so eager to get in on the action in this ad.
Plans call for investment in the millions, meaning new jobs for BC. Good news in these tough economic times.
Our job as government is to provide the support and encouragement that will turn these new opportunities into new jobs.
But before you write away for all the piles of public money and support, consider what happens in the real world.
The only thing I have seen from them is that they have been on my farm taking picture for their ad. I don't know what they call this SOCRED.
The Partners in Enterprise.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a government ad, not a SOCRED ad.
Oh, that's a government ad. Well, what's the difference?
We chuckle usually when we see the ad campaign. Partners and Enterprise, is it called?
Great pie in the sky. Really, he dangled, I don't know, the proverbial carrot in front of us, and we ate it, hook, line, and sinker.
There's little doubt the Sunshine Coast desperately needs new jobs. For years, it's relied on the forest industry, but jobs there have been floating away with the recession. The local pulp mill laid off 130 this year alone. Something has to replace it. So there's good reason for the government to get behind salmon farming. Floating farms now dot the coastline, each net pen below teeming with valuable fish stocks. It's a brand new industry with brand new risks, but bankers are reluctant to make loans without government guarantees. For Paul Herberman and his partners at Skookumchuck Salmon Farms and Agamemnon Channel, support and encouragement meant getting some pretty favorable loans from BCDC, the BC government's crown corporation that's dedicated to helping private enterprise. For these guys, that support and encouragement never happened.
The BC Development Corporation really liked it. They came up the second time we contacted them. They looked at it and they thought this was the farm that they could have as a showcase, as their pilot project for aquaculture farming in regards to the overall program.
They really went crazy over your project here.
The fellow that came up, yes, he did.
And what did they promise you?
They promised us in excess of $320,000. They would buy the property for us, give us title, hold mortgage on it, give us low-cost loan at 6% plus loans at prime plus 1, very good interest rates, forgivable for the first 18 months and then tack it on, etc.
And you believed all this?
Yes, of course.
Well, it sounds like pie in the sky to me.
Great pie in the sky. Really, he dangled, I don't know, the proverbial carrot in front of us, and we ate it, hook, line, and sinker.
So to speak, when did you find out it wasn't going to pay off?
4 weeks later, we found out. We were informed one early morning, 8 o'clock, all of a sudden we didn't fit in their program anymore.
After they spent 2 weeks with you, promising you all this fancy financing.
Correct.
Did they ever give you a reason why they backed out?
The only reason they gave us, we did not fit in their general program. We were not processors, and we didn't fit in the program anymore.
And the government? Has the government decided to help you in any way after this?
No.
What went wrong?
We don't know. We talked to the minister, Mr. McLellan, and he told us that there was all kinds of legislation in the program being processed. Nothing has been finalized, and the fish farmers should really go out and provide their own financing.
Up the inlet, Kraft Marifarms is also feeling a cash squeeze. Canadian banks won't lend them money without guarantees from the government. And the government set such low levels of support that the bankers just won't get involved. You're free enterprisers, I take it. Why should the government step in and give you guys money?
Okay, this is an industry where if we only get a little help to start, we're going to be completely self-sufficient after, say, 1 or 2 years.
But you need that bit of help now.
We just need a little bit of help to get off the ground because you don't sell your salmon for, say, 14 to 18 months. So it takes that while to grow them out.
And all you need is the government to go to your banker and say,
guarantee these loans. Perhaps the $300,000 limit might not be high enough. I think perhaps it should be increased to $500,000 with an appropriate equity position by whoever is doing this, obviously. So I think the BC government right now is getting a lot of political mileage out of the advertising without really having done a damn thing.
In fact, it appears that the real success stories, such as this farm further up the inlet, are making it big by ignoring the BC government completely. This one, after being turned down by Canadian banks, went to Norway, where lenders actually fought for the right to make the loan. What's wrong with the Canadian bankers?
They're scared shitless, that's all.
Of what?
Yeah, well, because they, the only one I'm in contact with, they say they are not into venture money. But
it's high risk, they see this as.
Yeah, I don't think it's very high risk because we get insurance on it. You get 70% insurance on the whole works.
Well, what is it that the BC government can do to encourage the banks that this is okay?
Well, if they put up what they said last year...
What did they say last year?
They said last year, you put up 1/3 and we come up with 2/3 guarantees. I don't care what the interest is.
The BC government said that?
Yes.
And have they fulfilled on that promise?
No way. No way.
And meanwhile, you've gone to Norway.
Well, luckily I got in contact with these people who made this here, and I made them a little bit of a partnership, and they are financing the whole works for 200-ton production a year, whatever that takes.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, and at least probably you're talking $500,000 to $600,000.
Here's another example of lack of support. This net pen is manufactured right in Richmond, British Columbia. But it has a hard time competing against a very similar but more expensive product manufactured in Norway and shipped to fish farms in British Columbia. The reason? The Norwegian Export Development Bank subsidizes low-cost loans, and it makes it nearly impossible for the local manufacturer to sell its product right here.
I must have a government spokesman to respond to these various serious charges of misrepresentation in the Partners in Progress ads. Do that next week, back after the break. For those who missed the best showbiz interview I ever did in my life, my recent interview with Shirley MacLaine will be shown on BC TV on Sunday at 5:30 p.m. I'll certainly watch it even if you don't. And Monday morning we're going to have a bash with Harcourt, the Mayor of Vancouver, His Honour Mayor Michael Harcourt. And we're going to talk to a friend of mine called Paul Gresco, who knows a lot of gossip about VIPs and bigwigs. That's Monday, 9 a.m. precisely.
Oops, somebody's left. I think they've left us the office to ourselves. Hello? Anybody here? They obviously have lots of documents that they need shredding here, but so far, I don't see anybody. Hello? Nope. I'd answer it, but that would seem pretty rude, I think. Although it might be somebody telling him to take John Fraser's picture off the wall. Yeah, they'll get through. It's easy to imagine being a cabinet minister from BC, sitting down at the desk. Who's in charge here anyway?